government in pushing forward with the implementation of the National Development Plan Vision 2030. And later in the evening, we will host a gala dinner which will be addressed by Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, who will talk more about the African Union's Agenda 2063, particularly focusing on the intertrade and investment opportunities in our continent. For all the issues we face in the economy, one thing we must not shy away from is that Africa is a plateau of economic opportunities for we Africans. And very often we forget this, and even as business people go all over the world, Asia, Europe, and the Americas looking for investment opportunities, when in fact we have a huge opportunity in our own continent. It is important to locate all our efforts, this giant step we are taking today, in the wider context of driving Africa's structural transformation and the common quest of the African continent for a sustainable development and shared prosperity. Once again, in the course of this Indaba, we will listen to various speakers who will share with us their views and the practical steps that will be taken and that are being taken in various areas, especially those who are already partnering with us on issues affecting or to unlock youth employment, women empowerment, and the revitalization of the township economy. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to assure you right from the beginning that this economic Indaba will not be a meaningless talk shop. We have very important decisions to make about how to move this provincial economy onto a growth path that is more sustainable, inclusive, and transformative. And if we can do it in Gauteng, and if Gauteng works, 1/3 of South Africa's economy is already working. So we have a responsibility to carry the burden of reigniting a growth path that is more inclusive and sustainable in the whole country. And therefore, there's no time to waste. Every sector of society should understand the danger of inaction or procrastination, as well as the folly of quarreling while Rome is burning. Little fights are for little people. Every sphere of government can and must take steps to safeguard our common national interest by reigniting a sustainable and more inclusive growth path. And once more, our social partners, business and labor have a very, very important role to play in this regard. We have convened this Indaba under the theme, a partnership for a sustainable and inclusive economy. In many ways, this is reflective of how our provincial government and the cities in our province are functioning. We value partnerships. We believe that our success over the past 2 years in the many things we have begun to do differently is a result of building enduring and transformative partnerships between government, business, labor, and civil society, including communities. As the leadership of Gauteng Province, we have convened this Indaba to place before the stakeholders a set of proposals on how we can unlock, jumpstart, and reignite a sustainable and inclusive growth trajectory for key sectors of our provincial economy. We are here to consult on our new economic development plan for the entire Gauteng City region over the next 14 years to give effect to the vision outlined in the National Development Plan and our 10-pillar program for transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization of Gauteng. Over the past 2 years, we have been working with credible teams of researchers and economists to look at ways in which we can transform, modernize, and reindustrialize the Gauteng economy so that it can grow in a sustainable and inclusive manner, in a manner that creates massive employment opportunities, and in a manner that empowers those who have been left out of the mainstream of the economy, in a manner that lifts up millions of our people out of poverty. The draft Gauteng Economic Development Plan, which will be presented later this afternoon by MEC Lebogang Maile, is a product of extensive research and engagement with key economic stakeholders in our province. This would include business leaders and business chambers, many of whom we have met over the last year and a half. Engagement with the trade unions would have just started. Extensive engagement with state-owned enterprises that have major operations in our province, as well as engagement with the research as well as innovation institutions in our province. Addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos in 1999, President Nelson Mandela had this to say, and I quote, "What has stood out in all our interactions with you is your profound goodwill towards South Africa. I doubt if you know how much this means to us. To ensure that a better life for all our people is a complex and difficult task. Your support strengthens our efforts and inspires us. We should lay the scourge of racism to rest. This requires strong democratic institutions and a culture of compassion. None of this is not possible without a strong economy," close quote. Over the past 2 years, we who have interacted with many business chambers and business leaders in this province, trade unions, and civil society organizations, understand what the key concerns and views are on how to move the Gauteng economy forward. As the Premier of this province, I feel there is a tremendous sense of goodwill towards the Gauteng provincial government and the municipalities in our province, particularly from leaders of business. Many of you would like to work with us to ensure that our province succeeds in building strong democratic institutions and a culture of compassion to which President Mandela referred. And of course, you do so understanding that that should be buttressed by a growing, inclusive, and sustainable economy which guarantees decent living standards for all our citizens. We all have interest in ensuring that Gauteng province is a well-governed province which upholds high standards of integrity, transparency, and responsiveness in the way it functions and services both ordinary citizens and all organized groups in our society, especially the social partners. Through our program of Ntirisano, we have begun to interact with various stakeholders in a way that is sustainable, in a way that addresses the key issues that they face every day. And we are keen to ensure that this experience is taken into the economy. The lessons we have learned by resolving specific issues about infrastructure projects in our communities that were sometimes taking too long, will be taken to dealing with all the concerns raised by business, which will help our economy to grow in an inclusive way. These include dealing with issues of red tape and the ease of doing business. Our open tender system has earned respect from our peers nationally, in provinces and internationally. We are beginning to tackle fraud and corruption proactively by institutionalizing and promoting a culture of integrity in decision-making processes of government, especially in the way we procure goods and services. In order to enhance the competitiveness of our regional economy, we have also been taking steps to cut red tape and reduce the cost of doing business across Gauteng province. Some of these details will be discussed today in various commissions, or others will come through the draft economic plan. We have established the Gauteng Investment Center, which is playing a key role to facilitate investment in the different corridors of our province and reduce the compliance burden, especially for small businesses. Many of you may not know the Gauteng Investment Center is a one-stop shop which is located in Sandton, which helps many businesses to deal with the many issues often which take the time of business people. Instead of focusing on their businesses, they are overburdened with administrative issues. Over the past year, we have already reduced the time for the approval of environmental impact assessments, the EIAs, which used to take 18 to 24 months, and now they take only 3 months to get an answer. We are also pushing to ensure that all service providers in our province, especially those who do business with government, are not only paid within 30 days, which is a national standard. We're now working to pay all service providers within 15 days. And this is very important for small businesses in particular, which face serious challenges when they are not paid on time, many of which lead to the closure of their businesses. I am glad to report that I have appointed a team led by MEC Paul Mashatile, whose single mission is to cut red tape wherever it exists in our system of government and improve the ease of doing business in Gauteng province. I'm sure you will be happy with this, business people. We're looking for this guy called red tape. We want to cut this guy into pieces. Whether it's in municipalities, Mayor Ramukhopa, we are looking for this guy. Why does it take long? Why should business wait for so long before things get to happen? That's the guy we are looking for. Red tape. We want to cut this guy to size, essentially. So I've given MEC Mashatile a big X. He's established a team. That team has started working. Red tape everywhere, wherever it exists, is in big trouble. The program director, Gauteng remains the economic and industrial hub of both our country and our SADC region. It is known we contribute more than 1/3 to South Africa's GDP and up to 10% to Africa's GDP. Gauteng is the heartbeat of all major sectors of South Africa's economy. We have the highest concentration of educational, science and technology, innovation, research and development institutions, which gives us greater competitiveness with regard to innovation and an availability of talent. Our province is already South Africa's financial, technological, and logistics nerve center. Our cities are the key drivers of our national economy, with the city of Johannesburg contributing 15% to the national economy, Tshwane contributing 9%, and Ekurhuleni contributing 7%. In essence, Gauteng cities play a very important role in their own right in igniting the kind of growth that is sustainable and inclusive. And over the next few years, they are going to play an even greater role, including in the economy of SADC as well as the African continent. Further, our cities, and in particular the metros, continue to account for the highest share of employment in our economy. And these are well-run municipalities that have received national and international recognition on a number of performance indices, such as broadband connectivity with regard to Tshwane, the sustainability interventions, including in the green economy, and credit ratings. We know for a fact that even as we await the last decision on the credit rating of our sovereign, the city of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni have recently received upgrades from Moody's and Fitch. So these are important institutions in our economy. Ekurhuleni has a triple A rating, and Johannesburg is triple B, I think, triple B. We are now also home as a province to 24% of South Africa's population. In other words, 1 out of every 4 people in South Africa lives in this province. Our cities are by far the magnets for all those in search of better economic opportunities. Gauteng has the highest percentage of international immigrants, with 52% of international migrants and 41% of internal migrants choosing to settle in our province. We are also pleased that we have begun to take action to revitalize the township economy. And I want to assure you, soon we will have a big intervention about the township economy stock exchange. I want to say soon, as part of that trajectory. Wait for the announcement, please. In all the work we are doing in the township economy, this is part of an area of intervention where we believe if we have sustainable partnerships with big business and medium enterprises, there's huge potential to bring more people, particularly black people, women, and young people into the mainstream of the economy. We need these partnerships in order to ensure that the township enterprises we are talking about don't remain small and on the margins. They have to be part of the mainstream of our economy. Let's remember that we have problems even as we meet here. With all the positive things we have referred to, the South African and Gauteng economy remains challenged with the following structural problems, which we must deal with. The first one is we have to deal with the problem of a racialized ownership structure in the economy. When President Mandela was referring to the scourge of racism, the manifestations of racialized ownership patterns is something we must confront together and deal with to bring more black people into the mainstream of our economy, including making sure that there are key players in key industries. Black people must also be industrialists and producers, not just consumers. Secondly, our economic structure has changed quite drastically, shifted away from manufacturing, and the manufacturing sector is experiencing significant problems, including the largest number of jobs that are lost. So we've got to pay attention to how we revitalize manufacturing through systematic interventions in those sectors of our manufacturing sector, subsectors of our manufacturing sector, which have greater potential for growth, including for employment in this regard. And one of the key issues that the economic development plan looks at is the subsectors of our manufacturing sector in Gauteng and their strengths and weaknesses, including the interventions we can make to boost employment and growth in this regard. The other important area of our economy is that it is somewhat caught up in the past. Although innovation and knowledge industries are beginning to show in different areas, we need to push with the modernization of our economy, including modernization of the manufacturing sector, so that it is significantly innovation-driven and technology-driven, advanced manufacturing, but without shedding jobs. It must also accommodate the fact that we need smart and green industries in this regard. Our economy also suffers from the problem of the skills profile of our workforce. Significant reliance on unskilled labor when there are key sectors of the economy that are high-skilled. So the skills question has to be an area of partnership and significant activity. And later we will hear what some of the businesses are doing, working with us on a program we call SEPO 500,000, helping the youth to enter the labor market. So we have to tackle that question of skills. Income distribution remains a key problem, skewed income distribution and inequities. And trade unions will emphasize that there is this, as a result of the history of our country, we have to pay attention to this issue of income distribution. Therein comes the minimum wage issue. There's also an important question about where is the economy located? Spatial transformation, therefore, becomes a very important key issue in this regard, that we must systematically ensure that we reshape the space of the Gauteng cities, which is itself important if we are to develop new economic nodes. The SMME sector across our province is not playing the role that the SMME sector is playing in other economies. We're still principally reliant on key conglomerates with regard to employment. And we know that job growth in the big companies is not at the rate is required. So we have to take action together about how do we expand and grow the SMME sector. Therein lies great potential for more people to be employed. So what can we do together to unlock the potential of the SMME sector to grow and become a key player in the economy of Gauteng, and thus becoming a key player in the national economy by virtue of the position of our province in the national economy. And by thinking about the SMME sector, we must think about the township enterprises. We must also think about cooperatives, so that we diversify the ownership patterns as well using those instruments. It is also important that we address another key structural problem of our economy. And that itself also depends on the role of state-owned enterprises and whether we can do much more to ensure they contribute in a key way, especially the infrastructure state-owned enterprises, in unlocking whatever blockages we have in our economy, especially with regard to logistics and communication. And lastly, it is also very important to emphasize that everything we do depends on partnership. And if there's a word I want you to take from this summit, this Indaba, is partnerships, partnerships, and partnerships. Returning to the challenge we face about unemployment, let's remember that this year marks the 40th anniversary of the June 16 uprising. So the biggest challenge we face is youth unemployment. And we are a youthful province, and uppermost in our minds as we deliberate here must also be answering the question, what more can we do to upscale all the initiatives to give the youth in our province hope? For if we don't give them hope, they will take hope themselves. and they might take that hope from you and I. In order to meet the NDP targets of 11 million jobs by 2030, the Gauteng economy must create 5 million jobs over the next 14 years. Anything less than 5 million jobs will be a non-starter. This means we have to double the size of the number of people employed in our province's economy to at least 10 million people employed over the next 14 years. Currently, we have 5 million people employed in our economy. This amounts to nothing given the rapid rate of urbanization. More people arriving in the province and young people entering the labor market, most of who are just parked, particularly in our townships. So how are we going to achieve this feat of at least 5 million jobs over the next 14 years if we are to meet the 11 million target set by the NDP? The draft economic development plan that we will table later today identifies key sectors that have the potential to achieve greater numbers of employment and to broaden the base of our economy in order to bring more black people, women, youth, and people with disability into the mainstream of our economy. We have also identified new economic nodes in the 5 different corridors of the Gauteng City region, which have potential for building new industries, which have comparative advantage based on each corridor or each region. What the role of provincial government will be is to invest infrastructure in these nodes so that we can attract and incentivize the location of businesses in each of these areas. What are these corridors? With regard to the central corridor, which is the city of Johannesburg, it will remain and continue to be the hub for finance, services, the ICT and pharmaceutical industries in our province. The city of Ekurhuleni is the manufacturing, logistics and transport hub of not just our province, but of the SADC region. It hosts Africa's busiest airport, OR Tambo International Airport, and is the main hub of our erythropolis. Again, in the course of this Indaba, you will hear a lot, including later from the mayors, about what we are doing in the city of Johannesburg, in the city of Ekurhuleni, in the city of Tshwane, in the West Rand district, and in Sidibeng, to get to the point where this will be dynamic and vibrant corridors where we're shaping the new Gauteng economy. The city of Tshwane, which is the northern corridor, is our nation's administrative capital, which has evolved beyond just being the seat of administration, today being the seat of the automotive industry in our country, as well as the seat of research, innovation, and the knowledge-based economy that is evolving. The West Rand district has had a history as a mining hub, gold mining hub on the western side of our province, but we know we need to diversify that economy because of the challenges of deindustrialization. And we are building a new diverse economy which will be linked to tourism, Maruping World Heritage Site, agriculture and agro-processing, as well as renewable energy industries. I must say something about mining. We have interacted with the mining sector largely located in the West Rand, and many of them are saying mining is not a sunset industry. In fact, I know they will say something here later. They say there's still 30 years of gold mining here in Gauteng. And substantial reserves, mining reserves. So those amongst us who think that the provincial economy, mining is gone, they were saying to us, wait for 30 years for it to be gone. So there's still many, many years of mining, particularly on the western side of our province. Lastly, Sidibeng. Sidibeng experienced deindustrialization, because it was the seat of the steel industry. Challenges faced by the steel industry have to be tackled decisively together. We have engaged with ArcelorMittal quite substantially, including with national government in this regard, but we are diversifying the Sidibeng economy to also focus on agro-processing and logistics, as well as tourism. It is for this reason, ladies and gentlemen, that the key question we have to answer as this summit is, what can we in Gauteng do to reignite the type of growth that is inclusive, transformative, sustainable, and competitive? In other words, we have a responsibility to reignite and set the pace of the kind of growth, including the kind of national growth that frees us from the scourge of racism and unemployment or a jobless growth, to take us nearer to the dream of our founders, the founders of our democratic constitution. This economic indaba necessarily is about finding answers to these questions, but we don't come here empty-handed. We will put a draft plan on the table for you to engage with. And we hope by the end of this indaba tomorrow, there'll be significant agreement on the shape, form and shape of the Gauteng economy going forward. This indaba speaks to our ongoing commitment to forming and strengthening transformative partnerships across the board towards this goal of making Gauteng province a province for all. We have prioritized the need to pay meticulous attention to infrastructure development. And infrastructure development is a critical part of what we in government must do. The central role of infrastructure in boosting sustainable economic development and growth has been confirmed through a study of the World Bank, which concluded that 10% increase in infrastructure spending results in an additional 1% growth in GDP. So infrastructure development, therefore, is one of the central pillars of the focus of our new economic development plan, because we too have come to the conclusion that infrastructure is a critical driver of economic growth. For this reason, ladies and gentlemen, the Gauteng provincial government, together with the cities in Gauteng, have just approved a 15-year Gauteng infrastructure master plan, which will also be unveiled in the course of this indaba, together with our draft economic development plan. We estimate in this 15-year infrastructure master plan that we will need an additional 1.3 trillion rands to invest in our social and economic infrastructure. This includes maintaining the existing infrastructure we have. Specifically, we are focusing on expanding our energy capacity, dealing with the challenges of water, broadening access to broadband connectivity, expanding public transport infrastructure, which includes the Gautrain and the BRT systems to all the different parts of Gauteng, and building mega human settlements and new post-apartheid cities. We are pleased to announce that working with the private sector, we have already made key advances with regard to specific investments in infrastructure as we speak right away. In essence, our infrastructure vision is to ensure there is an inclusive and competitive Gauteng city region, which provides equitable access to all residents and citizens in our province, which also has spatial justice, sustainability, connectivity, and which is underpinned by good governance. Equally, our infrastructure master plan will be supported by aggressive interventions we have referred to earlier on, to look for red tape wherever it exists and cut it and reduce the cost of doing business. To date, we have introduced a number of interventions which we will return to in the course of this summit, especially tomorrow in the various commissions. The program director, ultimately our goal is to create Gauteng into a seamlessly integrated city region, which has an inclusive economy, which is globally competitive, whose economy is driven by innovation and smart regulation, a highly skilled, healthy and talented workforce. The city region, which is also offering a key platform for Africa's industrialization and structural economic transformation. This is our vision to play a key role in where Africa goes. So we view this summit also as a platform to consolidate and enhance partnerships across all sectors, including to develop this as a shared vision of the kind of Gauteng we want. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Development Plan is a common vision and program for all of us in our country. We believe all provinces and municipalities can do much more to implement the National Development Plan in the concrete conditions of their own specific conditions. We will also focus in the course of this summit and Indaba on the competitive advantage we already have in the SADC region. Some of our key industries are already immersed in the SADC economy. You will hear a lot when there are presentations later. We already have key competitive advantages in some of the sectors. We have to act more consciously on these issues. It is for this reason that we will look in the course of this evening on the issues of strengthening intra-Africa trade and taking these opportunities as well in a way that helps us to build the African economy. Accordingly, we must also identify the barriers that we have for trade in our continent and deal with those barriers so that there is free trade within all the regions of our continent and free movements of goods, of course, in the end, much freer movements of people across the continent. We will also spend time drilling down every sector of the economy in our province to look at its potential and look at the interventions we can make together to grow that potential. So the aim, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, is to emerge here with a plan that has been agreed with a great deal of detail. From where we stand, we need to strengthen partnerships. I want to return, as I conclude, to the importance of dealing with the problem of youth. Our young people are edgy. Our young people are becoming reticent. Our young people are becoming impatient. Women too, particularly black women, have waited for too long to be included in the economy. And township enterprises everywhere have waited for too long to be taken much more seriously. So as we deal with other troubles of our economy, we must know that many people in our province and probably in the country are also getting impatient with regard to an economy that is not delivering enough jobs and is not empowering enough people, still driven substantially by few. So we have to work together to tackle unemployment, particularly youth unemployment. But we also have to work together to find workable formulae for sustainable empowerment. And I want to emphasize, by empowerment, we don't mean giving businesses or including people who are not business people into your companies. There are many black business people, and particularly if you want to find them, go to the townships, who are doing something to get the economy going. And don't look for me, the politician, to include you, to include me in your board or give me some stake in your company. That type of empowerment is not sustainable. Let's get black people who are entrepreneurs, who are trying to do something, who have established businesses, who are trying to get somewhere. Those are the people who must be empowered. They know how to run businesses. They just don't want to be sitting in the boards and earning dividends. They want to run this economy. Those are the kind of people we must empower. And I want to conclude by saying we in the Gauteng city region government, business, labor, and civil society must be ready to solve the problems that we face, because it is within our power, and those things that are within our jurisdiction, let's solve them together. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very much, Honorable Premier. Like I indicated earlier on, that he will certainly do a good job in explaining our vision, where we want to go and why we are here today. I don't want to repeat the important things he said about our interventions, our plans, and our programs in the different sectors of the economy, especially because I would have an opportunity later on today to share with you our draft plan for the economy of Gauteng. And you will all have an opportunity in the different commissions to engage with our plan. If you look at our program, it is structured in such a way that it gives all of you an opportunity to interact with the plan as it will be presented later on today. And at this point, I want to, because I didn't start by taking you through the program of the conference. And I think by now you are all aware that the conference, the Indaba, will take place today and tomorrow. And today is going to be a bit hectic, as you will see on the program, because the first part, which is chaired by myself, was just about welcoming you and the Premier giving the perspective of the provincial government on the issues of the economy, which he has just done now. The Minister of Finance, who's on his way, Minister Pravin Gordhan, will give an input on the state of the South African economy. And then linked to that address, we will have a panel discussion. A panel discussion later, which was supposed to be immediately. But as the Premier indicated, that some of the panelists in that panel were traveling, and therefore they are still on their way. We then decided to move that panel. So we'll then immediately have a plenary discussion in a form of a panel on regional industrial strategy and potential of various sectors of the Gauteng economy. And that session will be chaired by the MEC of Finance, Honorable Barbara Chrissy. And then the plenary discussion on the state of the economy will then be facilitated by Mr. Andile Kumalo. And the panel will look at the state of the South African economy, taking action to promote inclusive growth, contribution in Gauteng. So I'm not taking you through the panelists there, but you'll see is one of the panels that has labor, a strong presence of labor there. And we'll also have Mr. Lumkile Mondi being part of that panel. And at this point, I want to also welcome Minister Pravin Gordhan. You are welcome. If we can please give him a round of applause. Thank you. And then we will have lunch. After lunch, we will then have another plenary discussion on partnerships between business and government. And that session will be chaired by the MEC this evening. And I hope at that time you'll still be with us and you'll still be energetic. Then tomorrow we will go straight to commissions. And before we break today, we will then announce the different venues of the commissions. And as I've said, that these commissions are aligned to the different themes that are contained in the plan. I'm not going to repeat them now. And because we don't have much time, I would want to take this opportunity, Honorable Minister, to welcome you, because the Premier did explain that you had to go to a meeting with the President, and we are very happy that you were able to join us this morning. And without wasting any time, Honorable Minister, can you please come through to address the Indaba? Can we please welcome the Honorable Minister? Is it not here? Rush. There's a password left. How are you, sir?
This one, I think. Which one is it?
Let's top one. Let's open it. It's the same.
Oh, let's see first. Okay. Okay, you can use it from here. It's fine. Oh, close. Let's take it. Send it to desktop. Okay.
You can just open it on the stick.
Desktop. What is it called?
It'll take too long.
It's here.
Open it.
Is it this one?
Why don't you open it on the stick instead of...
Oh, it takes time there. It doesn't want to open from here.
Oh, I see.
Is it this one?
No.
Let's see from the stick.
So the word minister.
Economic.
Overview.
Economic.
I got it now. Go back to the stick.
Let's go back to the stick.
Try and open it there. Right, that's all.
Okay. There we go. Here's your clicker.
It's not.
It's coming just now.
Okay, let's move the computer that way. Carry on. Move it, move it.
Are you gonna use this?
Sorry.
Doing it with Malaysia, doing it with Lusaka, I'm doing it with Lazy, and with the Mozambique.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry to give you a few minutes to gossip amongst yourselves. What was this fellow doing with the president? No, in fact, we have a cabinet meeting this morning, so I thought I should attend the cabinet meeting first and then join you and then go back to the cabinet meeting. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of the panel this morning. And let me also congratulate Gauteng for providing important leadership in organizing this conference or get-together to discuss their economic plan for the city region and the province, and starting to conceptualize what it means to do collaborative economic planning, particularly in an era and at a time when there's so much of pessimism, both globally and within the South African economy as well, in terms of whether we're going to get the kind of growth that we require to create jobs, to reduce inequality and poverty, but importantly to reignite economic activity in our own situation. So the themes that you have in your documentation pertaining to transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization are important national themes as well. And one hopes that one of the outcomes from an interaction like the ones you're having over the next 2 days would reinforce the kind of interaction that government has been having at a national level with business and labor. Because this is a time where none of us can go it alone. None of us is going to be able to provide the answers or the resources to get to 3% growth, let alone 5% growth, which the National Development Plan actually requires. It's also a time, and this is exemplified by many of the issues that you will be discussing, to give recognition to the macro factors which we normally talk about at a treasury level and elsewhere, on the one hand, but importantly start focusing on what needs to be done at the micro level. Because invariably it's what happens or does not happen at a micro level. What a provincial authority does or does not do, what a local government does or does not do, matters a lot to whether investors are comfortable, whether businesses will grow, whether the right infrastructure has been provided, and whether, as we call it today, the right ecosystem has been created as a result of government's initiatives. There's a lot of talk about these things, but one of the things I think we're learning, certainly as we look at the reports of the ratings agencies and the lessons arising from interactions with them, is that, and this is something that you should take to heart as well, that people who have an interest in South Africa, including ourselves, don't want any more plans. What they want is action. They don't want to hear about promises. They want to see what are the milestones that they can watch and we can watch, which will give us an indication that we are actually trying to achieve the objectives that we've actually set. And it's also a time where we've got to have the courage to convert ideas to implementation and learn the harsh and sometimes exciting lessons of what implementation has to teach us, because it's only by implementing ideas that we will learn whether our ideas are right or wrong. Otherwise, on paper, you can use the most glossy paper, prepare the smartest brochures, and they all look extremely smart. Right? But the task that we have today is not just to look smart, but be smart, and above all, demonstrate to our population and our citizens that as government and business and labor elites, we in fact have their interests at heart at the end of the day, and that what we do, apart from putting money into public coffers or private pockets, the benefits are actually going to accrue to citizens. Because that's the narrative, by the way, globally. Last week, a few of us attended an OECD conference in Paris, and it's interesting that what is called the Rich Club, or the Club of the Rich, is talking about very similar concerns to the ones that we have. So if I read from one of their slides, they say that one of the issues that people have is the fact that productivity gains are not being widely shared. So as business people, we want workers and our enterprises to be extremely productive, but at the end of the day, the cream, and I suppose many people like cream, depending on whether you're on the Banting diet or not, but the cream is actually whisked away by the few at the top. The Guardian newspaper last night has an article which shows that global wealth amongst the rich has grown some 8% or so to $168 trillion. This is just the rich, right? And that most of the billionaires and millionaires are now coming from the East. My due apologies to Gauteng. You thought you were producing them here, eh? But there are fascinating numbers that emerge from that report and again from this OECD meeting, because one of the issues that comes up is that productivity growth has slowed and inequality has risen. So it's no longer just the so-called lefties with red ties or progressives of whatever kind who are commenting on issues of inequality and the injustice that causes. Today it's becoming a wider concern in the world that inequality results in populist politics, it results in social disruption at the end of the day. And so everybody is looking for what is this inclusive model of growth, which is one of the themes that underpins the kind of work that you're doing in Gauteng as well. So let me take you through some of the numbers very quickly and then make a few general remarks. So what is the current state of the economy? And we've borrowed from an old friend of many people in this room who used to be called Lenin. And he used to write a tract called What is to be Done? Over 100 years ago. But this is just to remind some of us. So what we're saying here is that we need to re-engineer our economy, and many of the discussions you're going to have are going to build on the strengths that you see on the left-hand side, that we have strong institutions, and interestingly, agencies like Moody's have confirmed that, and sometimes we doubt it ourselves, but there's no doubt that as a young democracy, our institutions are indeed resilient, and in particular, our legal framework provides security not only to business, but to other sectors of society as well. Similarly, we have well-developed capital markets, and this is an interesting asset that we have in South Africa when compared virtually to the whole of Africa and to many other parts of the developing world as well. And the lesson here is one which many African countries are learning, where because capital markets outside of those countries were very willing over the last, 3 years or so, to welcome borrowing from those capital markets, and economies, particularly oil-based and resource-based economies, were doing very well. Countries went out, they borrowed in dollars and euros, The oil price crashed, commodity cycle went down, and suddenly you have depreciating currencies, and these countries now find themselves in fiscal and other difficulties as well. If you compare that to our own country, we've made sure that for a long time now, not more than 10% of our annual borrowing takes place in foreign currency. So 90% of our borrowing as government, which will be about 128 billion rands this year, takes place in rand. And therefore, the depreciation in the currency doesn't shock our system to the same extent that it has shocked many other systems across the continent. So that's the strength that we have. The share of GDP spending on infrastructure has been good up to now, but we're in the process of beginning to develop a new package to ensure that that pipeline of infrastructure projects doesn't whittle down. And I'm sure that there's similar work cumulatively that will be happening in the Gauteng context as well, but an important area for us to focus our minds on. There's a reasonably good environment for business. Again, South African business sometimes tends to be more pessimistic than they need to be, because when you talk to foreigners who are interested in South Africa and see value in being based here, they recognize that notwithstanding what we would consider to be negatives, they see lots of positives. And when we attend Africa-wide conferences, there's no doubt that South Africa still has the best business infrastructure on this continent. The question is, how do we use it to our advantage, and how do we welcome outsiders to use it as well? The renewed effort that we're making in terms of promoting growth and economic reforms by working with business and labor over the last couple of months is also beginning to pay dividends. The two ratings agencies so far, Moody's and S&P, have given fair amount of credit for and to that process. And later this afternoon, so while you'll be sitting here and having your dinner tonight, you're either going to pick up a glass of water. I don't know if the Premier is paying for any alcohol this evening. But you can buy your own bottle of cheap champagne, because Fitch will be making the announcement later today about whether we remain where we are in their books. So you can cross your fingers and hope that they come up with the right answers. We certainly think that we've done the right kind of work with labor and business to present a united front on your behalf and earn another 6 months of breathing space so that by December we have an opportunity to work at some of the issues that we've actually worked out, identified. On your right-hand side, the global environment is pretty dismal at this point in time. The general view is that the Great Recession hasn't worked its way out of the system, that it is still impacting particularly on European banks, the Chinese economy as it begins to turn around. The one bright spark is the Indian economy growing in the last quarter at 7.9%. But generally, there's still too much of financial volatility in the system. The interest rate increases in the United States and the kind of messages that are coming from there also increases the volatility. There's a marked negativity towards emerging markets, generally speaking, which dilutes sometimes and gets exacerbated at other times, but in very quick succession. And as a result, that change in mood doesn't actually help us. Our domestic business confidence, as we saw yesterday, is pretty low, so I'm hoping that interactions like the ones you are having will lift your spirits and increase at least the confidence and the belief that we are capable of holding our own destiny in our own hands and making our plans work in concrete terms, as I said earlier on. Lower commodity prices are going to stay with us for a while. Although oil is ticking slightly above $50 a barrel, it's still a huge way from the $100 a barrel that it used to be. And so there are many pluses, economically speaking, that economies can actually derive benefits from at this point in time. But one of the lessons of the commodity cycle going down is the necessity to diversify economies. And that's an area that the continent in particular, as you talk to the chairperson of the AU this evening, has as a formidable challenge on its books as well. The stimulus that we saw in the earlier period of the recession, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, both from the fiscal and the monetary side, in most countries has reached the ceiling. And the few countries that have fiscal space, that is the ability to spend money in order to stimulate economies, in particularly the United States and Germany, don't have the political space or don't have the political wherewithal to make the right decisions which would benefit their regions and thereby benefit other parts of the world as well. So immediate focus is to intensify implementation, as I said earlier on, and the more of that we have, the better our footing will be in relation to the next point, which is preserving our sovereign credit ratings. I'm sure all of you are familiar as to why sovereign ratings are important, so I'm not going to go into that. But it might be very useful around your tables to have this discussion as to what is the meaning of and the necessity for preserving our foreign ratings. Deepening collaboration between government, labor, and business. I mean, meeting at a conference like this is one thing, but I'm hoping that under the leadership that you have in Gauteng, you'll be able to turn this collaboration into actual practical work, geographically based, project-based, which begins to create a new kind of collaborative culture amongst the three key role players. We will constantly have differences amongst us, but this is the time not to exacerbate the differences. This is the time to find common ground, because the advantages of working with a common platform, as you indicate in your documentation, is far outweighs the kind of issues that might keep us separate at this point in time. And there's a lot to be gained in that way of working. Converting investment ideas into real deals. This is also a key area. It's not as if South Africa is depleted of investments. If you speak to my colleague, Minister Rob Davies, he'll give you any number of examples of 100 jobs here, 500 there, 1,000 there. In the motor industry in particular, there's huge amounts of investment that is taking place. But what's missing in our case is scale. We need to increase the scale of investment, both from South African-based capital and foreign-based capital as well. So the question, whether you are a local government politician or bureaucrat or a provincial one or a national one, is how do we as South Africans invite investment into our geographic locations? How do we become more friendly towards investment without being, and this is a dangerous word in South Africa at the moment, captured by various interests? So you can be friendly and independent, right? You can be welcoming and still stick to the line of the law. I've learned that over many years. You don't have to go and sit in anybody's pocket to do the right thing. And so, exercise your own principles, but do the right thing as far as public interest and national interest is concerned. But if you ask many people, they'll say the difference between us as South Africans and many other parts of the world is that we lack urgency. We lack thirst. We lack this absolute burning desire to get people to come into this country, put their money in, and work together as government, labor, and business so that we can indeed create jobs and lift the 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 number to beyond 2% in another year or two. And that's a tough question that we have to ask ourselves. How are we going to actually inject ourselves with that extra energy and urgency that is actually required? And demonstrate, the last point is equally important, demonstrate that benefits go to all social partners. We can't just have, as the numbers I gave you earlier from the Guardian newspaper, more and more millionaires and fewer people benefiting on the ground. The new formula we need to find is how all sectors of society benefit and what are the mechanisms that will ensure that those benefits accrue. Otherwise, the rest of society begins to catch up with the political and economic elites in different countries. These are just numbers you don't have to worry about. I'll leave them with you. about growth patterns across the world. They're fairly depressing for the next 2 years or so, nothing exciting happening here. And if you look at countries like Brazil and Russia in particular, amongst the emerging markets, there's a lot of trouble because they find themselves in recession. You can see, if you just look at the height of the bars here, how growth in South Africa has been declining from 2010 on your left-hand side to 2015 on your right-hand side. The different horizontal bars reflect different sectors of the economy. And again, you've got to ask yourself, what can we as the engine room of the economy of South Africa and Gauteng can do to change this configuration and reverse this trend. Our own budget forecasts, which are going to change by the time we get to October, in respect of all of these numbers, don't look too good, although the situation will be improving as we go into the latter part of 2016 and 2017, unless there's some other global shocks that come our way. This is again an indication. The red is mining. You can see how the graph is going there. And the black or blue is manufacturing. And there's nothing exciting happening in the two quite key sectors in our economy. The retail sector is likely to provide some support as we go forward. Poor employment outcomes. Again, the red is the unemployment numbers. And you can see how they shot up in recent times. If you look at that red line, and the blue or gray line are the employed. So if you're speaking to the Statistician General later, ask him to elaborate on these numbers and what they mean for us. So again, what I like to do these days is not talk too much about, or rather focus too much on the rhetoric that we are repeating for each other, but look at the numbers and say, what are the numbers telling us? Do all of our efforts actually contribute to the change in the numbers? Do all of the things that we do as business, as labor, and as government impact that red line and turn it into a different direction? Because if we don't, then we're not making an impact on the economy as we should be making. So the public sector in the last, 4 or 5 years has been the key employer, as you can see here on the extreme right. Private sector employment has been growing marginally in various sectors, but we've also been losing jobs and getting new entrants to come into the economy as well. This is an interesting concept that was used in the OECD as well, broken promises to the youth, which is a big concern for us as well. That we are still, although we know the numbers, we know the status of people, young people in our economic and social environment, we as a very resourceful country, in more senses than one, haven't yet cracked what do we do with unemployed and lower skilled young people in South Africa. And what are the kind of ventures we can come up with, and I hope you can come up with some answers in this regard, to help young people to move into a terrain where there's hope for their future and they can see prospects for any entrepreneurial spirit that they actually have. These are some of the areas that we've been looking at. We've done the fiscal bit as government earlier in the year, and you can see that the ratings agencies have given recognition to that. But fiscal consolidation can end up being anti-growth, so to speak. In other words, if you cut your expenditure too much as government, you can damage the prospects for growth. So we've got to keep the balance between narrowing the deficit on the one hand and sustaining some level of contribution to growth on the other hand. So the key challenge that we keep coming back to is how do we produce higher levels of growth, and in particular, inclusive growth in the South African context. I'm sure you'll discuss industrial and labor policy. Equally, geospatial policy is something that Gauteng has been looking at and is a big structural constraint from our past. And the financial system and its contribution to the real economy is a concern all over the world, and it's just one that inspires certain questions in our own case as well. A big issue that you're going to find around the world, and it is now featuring in what we are saying as well, is do we at different levels have the political strength and the political space and the political will to take on difficult structural challenges that require reforms. And throughout the world, if you watch in France, in Italy, in many other countries across the globe, including our own, political and economic leaders are grappling with the question, how do we restructure our economies? How do we take on tough challenges in our economies? And how do we undertake reforms that would potentially create a better environment for growth and job creation in our respective countries? So in our case, our reforms are focusing on the energy environment. We've sort of balanced the scale. We now need to ensure that our energy generation gets ahead of the curve so that when the economy starts growing again, energy is no longer a constraint, as it has been for the last few years. We never thought it would be such a damaging constraint, but it has been over the last few years. And so finding new ways of getting co-generation from the private sector is an important part of what we're trying to do. But there are other areas of reform in relation to the labor market, where there are discussions in NEDLAC, the way in which state-owned enterprises are governed and their financial management takes place is another area as well. The way in which we create ecosystems that are supportive of micro and small businesses is one where we've been lagging, I think, particularly at a municipal level. So this is a graph borrowed from the OECD, which says how our country is doing in terms of implementing reforms, although there's no magic formula which says that if you undertake these reforms, you will necessarily get high levels of growth. But what is equally clear, if you look at this graph, is that right at the bottom is the electricity constraint. And if we solve this constraint, it can, in fact, lift growth to 2.1% or beyond. So again, it shows you how energy has been a major factor in the constraints that we've had on growth. Similarly, transport bottlenecks can make the contribution to take us to 3. Shortages of skilled labor is another area to take us to 3.5%. Low domestic savings and small market size, which many business people are knocking into, if we solve some of those problems, can take us beyond 4% eventually as well. These are some of the things that we're focusing on at a national level, in particular the 9-point plan, which involves energy, agriculture, and agro-processing, which I'm sure you will be looking at as amongst the sectors as well, advancing beneficiation or value add to our mineral wealth, more impactful industrial policy, encouraging private sector investment, moderating workplace conflict, the SMME environment, and the Operation Pakisa work in relation to the oceans economy. Let me round up. But one key area is removing constraints, which itself can add quite a few percentage points to growth if we get it right. So your top left-hand corner is costs for exports and imports at the border. Bottom left-hand corner is other regulatory processes. If you go to Rwanda, they'll show off about how many hours it takes to register a business. Compare it to the World Bank study on our 8 metro cities, published in late 2015, which shows that in some of our metro cities, it can take over 300 days to connect water to a business. Can you visualize that? 300 days to get a water connection, hundreds of days to get plans passed. So all of those are important constraints on growth, which we can very easily make changes to and get positive things out of. The electricity supply, in particular, the contribution that renewables are making and the IPPs in coal and gas could make, the labor market issues that I raised earlier on, driving employment-intensive growth is another area where we talk a lot, but whilst we've done some work, there's a lot more potential to do work in this particular area. the infrastructure constraints I mentioned earlier on, scaling up small businesses and improving the ease of doing business are some of the issues. The Invest South Africa initiative is an important one. This is the ambition here is to create a one-stop shop. The process has started, so foreign and local investors can solve all of their problems by going to one place rather than running from door to door. And there's some other issues there. On the fiscal side, we've been asking provinces and national departments to stop filling all posts so that we can reduce the compensation part of our budget and make sure that more goes into investment rather than consumption on the expenditure side of the budget as well. And then these are some of the areas that we've been working on as a result of the efforts that the President initiated in respect of government, business, and labor. So let me conclude by saying that the subjective part, I mean, these are all some of the data, but the subjective part, that is the human part of some of this work is as important as the technical part. I think what the product you have before you indicates is that you have a clear vision for where you want to take this particular province and the kind of contribution it can make to overall questions that we are confronted with as a country. Secondly, the one thing I would certainly appeal for is constructive and bold leadership from all sectors of society, where we're willing to have the courage to say we're going to work together, we're going to forget our small differences for now and focus on the issues of growth and employment and, of course, business generation as well. And we've got to find a new spirit of collaboration amongst us if we're going to overcome the hurdles of the next 18 months or so. Even if we do all the right work between now and December, it's the next year that is the key for us as South Africans to show that we can move into a different kind of growth path. In doing so, one of the things I'm sure you will discuss is the question of institutions. So we shouldn't be reliant on any individuals as individuals. At the end of the day, what you want are strong, resilient, principled institutions that outlive all of us, that have the right culture, that have the right values that actually inform those institutions. And institutions are things that you now bequest to future generations. So each of us, whether we come from labor, business, or government, has a responsibility to continue to contribute towards the building of institutions so that we can achieve social justice, ensure that in South Africa we create an economy where benefits do accrue to all of our people. And in a sense, we need to say we don't want the crass US-style, maybe Trump-style capitalism that we have as a very distinct example of what not to emulate because we alienate millions of people and leave them on the wayside. But equally, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you will be able to reflect the necessary sense of urgency that is required so that we can produce positive results that will inspire hope and above all action from all sections of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. The input certainly helps to give a broader picture of the challenges that we're facing as a country. I was saying the input helps a lot to make us understand the challenges and the constraints that we are facing, so that when we make these inputs in the different plenary discussions and commissions, we will be able to appreciate the magnitude of the challenges that we are facing, and we should be able to come with practical suggestions and solutions to the problems that we are facing in the different sectors of our economy. As I've indicated earlier on that I will be chairing until now. At this point, I want to hand over to the MEC for Finance, MEC Barbara Creasy, to take over the session. My task for now, and I'll see you later in the afternoon.